perfect is also a myth, as is normal. So you do yourself a disservice by being scared of or uncomfortable with real constructive feedback. Embrace that as well.
We recognize genius wherever it exists. And if you're known by the company you keep, we are proud to not only spotlight the women that are part of Rockefeller Capital Management's unique network, but also welcome our brilliant audience members.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Esposito, head of Rockefeller's Enterprise Client Coverage Group, and welcome back to Genius Loves Company. Everyone has a story to tell, and we're excited to hear those from some of Rockefeller's top private advisors, investors, senior leaders, and women in our broader network about the life and career experiences that got them here and the insights and perspectives they've gained. With me today is Lisi Madden, Managing Director and Head of Fiduciary Services at Rockefeller Global Family Office. In her role, Lisi is responsible for all activities across both Rockefeller Trust Company NA and the Rockefeller Trust Company Delaware. Lisi has nearly 2 decades of experience specializing in estate planning and the administration of trusts and estates. Welcome, Lisi.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I've been so excited about this episode, Lisi. We like to start from the beginning and have it be a bit linear, at least for the jumping off point. So, Lisi, tell us about your background. It's unique. There was an international experience in there. So where were you born? And tell us about growing up abroad.
So I was actually born here in New York City native. I feel like a bit of a unicorn, but after 5th grade, my family moved abroad to France, which for me at 11 years old was absolutely devastating. I had to leave my friends, my comfort zone, all that I knew. And my gosh, my favorite TV shows were dubbed. The local supermarket certainly did not carry my favorite cereal. But when I look back now, it was one of the most formative experiences of my life. And I think the main reason for that is that I was thrown into this environment where I literally did not understand what the people around me were saying. I didn't speak a word of French when we moved over there. The first day we went to a restaurant and I couldn't even figure out how to ask for the bathroom. And I just had to figure it out. I was foreign and different, and I had to adjust to that. And now, of course, I understand that every person is different and unique. And the sooner we can get comfortable with that, the more free we become to have and embrace our own ideas, find our own voice, and raise questions and thoughts that maybe others don't, and just quit wasting brain space on trying to conform to this concept of normal that I really haven't seen in existence yet.
Well said, Lisi. That international experience, especially 5th grade, how old were you? 11? That's such a formative time of your life to begin with. How has that influenced you as an individual, and I guess the ways in which you approach your work today?
Well, I think definitely living abroad was so formative for me and helped me be free to uncover my own real drivers and passions, I think, without interference from typical teenage and, even later pressures to conform. And I think I found that my main drivers were a very strong motivation to connect with people and also a pretty intense work ethic. It was just a drive that I had to give my whole self to everything that I was doing. And for a lot of the, quote, social kids around me, they didn't really think much of my nerdy bookishness. The desire to be with people and the desire to study don't usually go well together. But I remember living in a foreign country, going to national school, and I didn't really have a choice but just to surround myself with people who were on the surface just like me. But I learned that once you get past all that surface kind of stuff, which can take time and effort, there are real connections that you can make that can really broaden your horizon, I think, in many positive ways.
I can't wait to dig in more as this conversation goes on about how you've really married those two talents, your strengths in terms of connecting with people, and then that tireless work ethic. Can I also add in like fiercely competitive? Can I say that as well? Which I'm sure we'll get to at some stage. But
I like to say fiercely confident. But
we can say that. I like that. So you came back to the States. You finished out high school in Manhattan.
That's right.
You go to school in Philly. At what stage you're there, you're at school, you're studying what? And is law school anywhere on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so like any good history major, law school was always kind of in the back of my mind. And I was kind of a nerdy, independent person and ended up doing well in school. And I liked school. I liked learning. I liked challenges. I liked being part of a group and working with people. So what that translated to was I really wanted to stay in school, but I wasn't sure what school that would be after college. So as I said, as a history major, law school was in the back of my mind. And my father's in corporate law, and I saw how fulfilled he was with his career as a lawyer. But, you know, at the same time, I got to be honest, Laura, I saw some of the contracts that he worked on as a corporate lawyer, and I really didn't think that area of the law could get my blood pumping. I decided after college to work as a litigation paralegal for a year. Now, that work experience was crucial for me, but having experienced the world of litigation also firsthand, I wasn't sure that was really my calling either. So
I feel like you would have been an exceptional litigator. Sorry.
Probably, Laura. I think you're probably right.
There's the fiercely confident attribute, folks.
I wouldn't argue with you there. But, you know, if you don't want to do corporate law, if you don't want to be a litigator, why are you going to go to law school? Well, I'm not sure. So I decided to get my master's over in London in international health policy at the London School of Economics to go back to Europe to really make sure I was getting a broad lay of the land before finally committing and settling on law school, which I did. Don't tell anybody, but in large part because I really wanted to live in Nashville. It just seemed like a really fun town.
So you were ahead of your time. I'm not surprised.
Just loved law school immediately. It was challenging. And it was actually a very collaborative and collegial law school that I went to, which, you know, I later learned isn't always the case. So it ended up being a great decision.
And so in what stage did you choose a specialization in trust and estates law? And can you explain to us what is trust and estate law?
Again, had a phenomenal first year, a phenomenal second year, but I really still wasn't much closer to figuring out what I wanted to do with my degree. But all that changed during the summer that I worked at Milbank before my third year of law school, where I rotated through a few different practice areas. And one of those practice areas was trust and estates. And that is basically an area of the law where you help clients with all that is transfer tax planning. So you write their wills, but you also write trusts. You write powers of attorney, and you help them with complex, tax-efficient planning. People think of estate planning a lot of times as kind of death planning, but it's really lifetime planning. You're doing it throughout your life to make sure that at the end of the day, you're leaving your estate to who you want to leave it to in the most tax-efficient way. So I loved the area of the law immediately. I mean, it's technically complex. The tax code is quite large and complicated. So I knew there'd never be a risk of getting
forever
bored on that front. But what I also loved was that you were dealing with families and their stuff and their legacies. And that also never gets boring because every single family was different and presents its own unique challenges and opportunities on the planning side. So there was a real human element to the practice area that I loved. And I also loved that the human element was without question just as, if not more, important as the technical legal side. So it was both of those concepts in one practice area that really drew me to that area of the law. And what I also found too was that the estate planning conversation many times presented a key connection point for women in particular. What I mean by that is that many times it presented the opportunity to make sure that spouses had full visibility into an understanding of the family's finances and financial position, which I think is very important for all parties in a partnership to be aware of.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. You and your team play such a critical role when it comes to that kind of helping with that holistic planning. But you're right. Oftentimes, I think women are more engaged there. So I love how we're starting to see how one of the skills and the talents, kind of innate talents that you discovered about yourself when you were at such a young age living abroad, and that connection to people was really important to you. You can see how that very much now manifests in your role. So obviously, we work for a wealth management company, a holistic financial services organization. So I want to kind of follow the through line of then how you ended up in trust and estate planning, but within the context of a financial services firm. But before we get there, we ask all of our guests on the show, what's the most important piece of financial advice that you've ever received?
Well, maybe I'll respond by talking about the most important piece of financial advice that I think should be given to everyone. And that is that I very much believe that before you get married, every party to the partnership should take the time to understand the marital law landscape. You're deciding to commit to a partnership, and you should understand the default rules of the road legally in connection with that partnership in the event it dissolves. And by the way, those results may be absolutely fine, but it's important to understand them. I'll just give you an example. As a general matter, gifts that any one party receives during the marriage are usually considered separate property and not subject to division on divorce. However, if you put those gifts, for example, in a joint account with your spouse, and your spouse helps manage that money, then you may risk turning that separate property into marital property, which would then potentially subject it to division upon divorce. And again, that could be absolutely fine with you, but you should just do these things with your eyes wide open and understand that in some circumstances, the right answer for you might be to consider a prenuptial agreement. But as I say, the first step is just to get a lay of the marital law landscape, I think is really important to do before you get married.
Yeah. As you say, maybe it doesn't necessarily translate into a prenup, but knowledge is power, and
100%.
Making an informed decision obviously is something that's very much resonated with you early on. And I have to imagine with all the families and the different dynamics that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, you experience a lot of the consequences and potentially sometimes the unintended consequences when people go into these partnerships not necessarily having all of the information.
Exactly.
So education is so key.
Spot on. Knowledge is power.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get to the good stuff about Rockefeller. Okay, we understand the point at which you were drawn into trust and estates. You could have done this work, continued down the path at a law firm. What was it about Rockefeller Capital Management and our business that drew you here?
I love this question because I love my job so much. I love Rockefeller so much. And it was a big, somewhat leap of faith coming over in 2014. I wasn't looking to leave my law firm. It was comfortable, and I decided to make the move. I had 2 small young children. I really felt very strongly about the organization. I had worked with folks from the Rockefeller Trust Companies when I was at Milbank, and it was always a different kind of experience, a very personal experience, a very practical experience, and, a very tailored and frankly, idiosyncratic approach that the trust companies could take to each individual client that I thought was really unique. So right now, my role at Rockefeller is to oversee the 2 trust companies we have. We've got Rockefeller Trust Company NA, which is a federally chartered trust company, and we've got the Rockefeller Trust Company Delaware, which is a Delaware state chartered trust company. And those 2 trust companies can serve as a corporate fiduciary for trusts that clients have set up. What this means is that one of the trust companies holds and manages the trust assets for the benefit of named beneficiaries. I like to say that we get people coming to us from 2 sides of the spectrum. The first are those that are considering naming an individual as a trustee, but then the more they learn about the job, they think, well, this is actually quite a big job. And I don't really know any person who has the time or the expertise for it. Plus, it comes with, personal liability on the part of the individual trustee. Then you got those on the other side who are considering naming, one of the bigger banks as trustee, but their concern is that, well, I'm worried that this will result in a very bureaucratic and impersonal approach to a job that really is anything but. This is about my family, my needs, my goals, my aspirations, and really my legacy. And is that really going to be something that can be preserved and understood and honored by a machine? That's why I really believe that the trust companies here at Rockefeller are truly unique. We can offer the professional level of service that is needed to do the job right, but our size and really our DNA are such that we can take a very personal, tailored, and practical approach to the job as well, which I believe is critical.
So let's go back to that connection point that you made at the outset. I hear all of this and my brain goes just into overdrive of being overwhelmed. And I remember my own experience with thinking about trusts and estate setup for my family. Lisi, you're so good with clients, your team across the entirety of our 2 trust businesses. It's such a unique collaboration of professionals in the trust business. How do you engage clients? How do you get them excited? How do you get them engaged? Draw in your personal connection, that how you work with clients.
Well, I think it's really focusing on the people and getting to know the family and really getting the family comfortable with us, because that's the only way that they're going to feel comfortable speaking freely and openly and honestly about issues that may be very relevant to how we administer assets for their benefit over generations. The more we can learn and understand about goals, desires, aspirations, and also issues, challenges, obstacles facing the family, which, by the way, every family faces, the better equipped we are to manage the family's legacy in a way that honors what they want.
It's such a customized,
exactly,
personal, kind of intimate approach. I'm extrapolating here, but I imagine that's some of what can help kind of disarm clients, and they establish the trust, and it's a really critical role that you play hand in glove with Rockefeller's private advisors.
Well, it is, because people set up trusts for their children and their grandchildren, and they say, well, hold on, you are going to be the actual owner of these? Well, how do I know that you're going to make good decisions in giving money to my grandchildren when it's appropriate? And so that's really the best part of my job, helping families work through those questions to understand each other across the generations so that everybody can be invested in this as the family's legacy. It's not a checking account. It's more than that. It's a vehicle to help generations,
future generations.
In many cases.
Absolutely. So you mentioned when you moved from law firm to in-house and coming to Rockefeller, you had 2 young children at the time, and it was a bit of a leap of faith. So let's switch gears. Working mother in this field, share with the audience insights on navigating some of the personal experiences you've had and where you still see challenges from, even though your children now are a little bit older, where do you still see challenges for mothers working to integrate professional and family lives?
Well, I think integration is certainly a challenge. I want it to be more of a challenge for parents generally, not just women. I think really, for me, having a fulfilling career and having children, both has created such a rich life for me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I wish that sort of, I'm not going to call it a balanced life because it's never balanced. I'd say it's more of a juggling game. I would wish that juggling game on everybody, men and women, because I just think it leads to a richer life. And that said, it's certainly not easy. And a few key lessons I've learned are understand your limits. Don't overpromise either at work or at home. And also know that you're the only one who will enforce your limits. So do stick to them if you can.
Point.
Now, that's easier said than done, especially if you haven't got family around or
you're younger in your career.
Constrained. Exactly. Also, really have realistic expectations of yourself. You're probably not going to get an A+ across the board every day in your job.
Despite Lisi trying.
Parenting. Sometimes, sometimes you'll feel like you got an A in one area and a C in another, and that's okay. It'll be different the next day.
For young people, what advice can you offer to them as they embark on their own career journeys?
Oh my gosh.
Let our mistakes.
I have so much. Exactly. Let our mistakes pave the golden way, Laura.
Exactly.
And this is, I'm saying this again as something I continue to work on, but be confident. And to me, this really has 3 parts. Embrace your mistakes. That's how you learn. So don't let them impact your confidence at all. I know that I and a lot of other women I connect with, we tend to just globalize and dwell on our mistakes. I made this typo. It means I'm just a horrible person. Don't do that. Do what Taylor Swift says and shake it off. Don't be afraid of not knowing something. Have faith in yourself. And this is really hard, that you will figure it out. That's really hard to do. And then also be honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses. Perfect is also a myth, as is normal. So you do yourself a disservice by being scared of or uncomfortable with real constructive feedback. Embrace that as well. I think the second thing that I learned is to expect change. Plans are great and necessary, but you've got to expect that they're going to be changed or scrapped. I love Mike Tyson's quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
I love that.
So again,
say it repeatedly.
Exactly. Have faith that you're going to figure it out. And, this is another thing I work on. Appreciate the importance of communication. And this isn't just stay in touch with your friends from college. Do what you need to do in order to connect with the largest variety of folks around you. So those in different practice areas, those with different backgrounds, you name it. The more comfortable you can become with finding those connections more broadly, the better ideas you can get, the better collaboration you can get, and the more connected you can help everybody feel to shared goals. Another point, really understand the culture of an organization before becoming part of it. Be open and authentic with others about your challenges and your struggles. This is how you'll be able to help your mentees and also give them the language to articulate to others what needs to be said. And finally, know how to advocate for yourself and really be strategic in making sure you advocate in the right way by showing the relevant people what you are doing to advance what those people care most about.
Wow. So many pearls. I hope everybody rewinds and takes another listen. When you look back on your career, were some of these areas just already innate to you, or do you feel like it's been through growth and personally and professionally?
Not at all. It's been through so much growth. And I think growing up as a lawyer, perfection is the standard, right? And so you're constantly held to this unattainable standard, which is hard to live with. And you have to marry that with making sure you stay with that drive for perfection, but not letting it diminish your motivation to learn and to grow and to continue to go into areas where you may not be the expert when you start it, but that's okay. Have faith that you will figure it out.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. I know you likely get out stress and emotion, and as a dedicated runner, you run in all kinds of weather, which just strikes me as wild. Something else I admire about you. How'd you get started? What's your greatest running achievement?
I love being outside. I went to a gym once or twice and I fell off the treadmill. So that didn't happen again. And I started running with my father when I was about 10. We'd run around the reservoir in Central Park. And then when we moved over to Paris, we continued our little hobby. It's just been something that has been, a key part of every day that I don't miss because it's, 30 minutes that I do. And that is a critical part of my day. For me, it's a way to ensure that during this time where we're just constantly available and reacting in the moment, I just think it's important that we force ourselves to, at least for some part of the day, step back and actually reflect, think, consider. Because now with constant communication, you could be consumed 24 hours a day with pure reaction in the moment. It's a very important thing to me. I can't sit still long enough to meditate, so running is my meditation. And the sort of culmination of doing this with my father was he made me run the Philadelphia Marathon with him when I was a senior in college. Now, if you've ever been a senior in college, Laura, you're really not interested in training for a marathon. No. You're more interested in just spending time with your friends. I made a poor decision, though, in choice of book on tape for my marathon training in Philadelphia. I chose The Grapes of Wrath. That's not, if anyone's wondering, it's not a motivational piece for marathon training. I'll just give everyone that little
and for the younger generations,
that little pearl of wisdom too. Yes,
who don't understand.
And it was on a Walkman. Younger generations, you look that up. Google that.
So there was no such thing as being like, you know what? Forget The Grapes of Wrath. I'm going to put on Taylor Swift.
I was stuck with it, and I think there were 7 different cassette tapes to it.
Oh my God! I have such a visual. Where were these cassette tapes? That'll be for the next episode.
But I beat my father in the marathon, just for the record,
too. I told you,
now,
audience,
I'm not
fiercely competitive, fiercely confident, fiercely confident. I love it. I love it. Okay. So, Lisi, this has been such a treat. Our parting question, another one we like to ask all of our guests. Where can we find you at 10 a.m. on a Saturday?
Running, yoga, visiting friends and family. I'll tell you, my most recent endeavor is to attempt to find a creative hobby. So far, I've tried knitting, which I attempted with my 12-year-old daughter, and that ended very poorly with both of us throwing our knitting needles and quitting. Pottery, determined to be too messy.
Yeah.
Loom weaving left me with a backache, so that's off the list. So stay tuned. Next up is needle pointing.
So you'll
just have to have me back, Laura, on another episode.
I love
I'll leave you with
pointing.
I'll leave you with the cliffhanger.
Lisi, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Genius Loves Company. To learn more about Rockefeller Capital Management, visit rockco.com or keep up with us on LinkedIn or Instagram. This material was prepared by Rockefeller Capital Management. The views expressed of the hosts and guests in this episode are as of a particular point in time and are subject to change without notice. The views expressed by the speakers are solely their own and may differ from or conflict with those of other divisions in Rockefeller Capital Management. This information was provided for illustrative and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as an investment recommendation, investment advice, an offer of Rockefeller investment advisory or brokerage services, or a projection or illustration of the performance of any particular investment or strategy offered by Rockefeller. Forward-looking statements, including those presented herein, are inherently uncertain, as future events may differ materially from those reflected, and past performance is not a guarantee of future performance.